For those people who haven't been to this webinar before, the name says it all. It's Ask Me Anything in relation to your job search. So, no doubt if you've got a question that's burning for you, there may be others in the group or who are tuning in that might have a similar question. And so the last thing you want to do is to leave this chat tonight and think, oh, I really wish I'd asked Richard that question, but for whatever reason you don't. So ask away. While I'm waiting for those questions to come in, and if you can do that via the chat, please. Okay. Okay, I see what's going on here. I've got there's two different. Yeah, you are putting these comments in on the Q&A, not the chat. So I'll leave both of them open in case people do it through. Oh, I see. I can hear you, but chat is disabled. Okay, so it appears chat is disabled. I don't know why. So let's get rid of chat and let us instead use Q&A. So any questions, type them in there. And thank you, Jane. You can hear me. However, chat is disabled. Appreciate the feedback. And Bill on the Gold Coast, nice to have you along. Okay, so so typing into the Q&A, what questions you might have for me as it pertains to your job search. Happy to answer every question that goes in. And if we get it all done in 20 minutes, that's great. If it takes an hour and 20 minutes, that's fine also. While I'm just waiting for some questions to go in. So I imagine most people know who I am, but if you don't, Richard Triggs, I'm the founder and CEO of Arete Executive. I'm also the author of Uncover the Hidden Job Market, which is a book aimed at executives and board directors looking for a new job. And if anybody on this chat has not already received that book and would like to get a free copy, either go to our website and you can download a free copy from there, or alternatively, send us an email and we can send you a PDF copy via email. So, author of Uncover the Hidden Job Market, that came out originally in 2015. The new edition came out at the end of 2023. And then I've also recently written another book. It's called Winning the War for Talent. And that book is aimed at the employer. So, in this war for talent, as it's often described, how do you attract and retain top performers? And that book is also available if you are interested in getting a copy of that. Okay, so Bill's asked the first question. How should we handle expected salary questions? So that's a very good question, and one that certainly people talk to me about often. I suppose the first thing is that when you're engaging in a recruitment process, it often depends on whether you are applying for an advertised role or you are instead having a conversation with an employer about perhaps a hidden job market opportunity, and both of them are kind of managed fairly differently. So let's talk about applying for a job. Often when you apply for a job, in fact, in most circumstances, they won't advertise the salary. And there are some recruiters who don't want to, talk about salary too early in a recruitment process. However, I don't think that that's a good thing, because the last thing you want to do is get a candidate engaged in a recruitment process only to find out, down the track that the salary is not appropriate, and you've potentially wasted your time, the candidate's time, and the employer's time. So as a candidate, when you're applying for a job, I certainly would, in the very first conversation, be asking, what is the salary on offer? Now, recruiters may then turn around and say, oh, well, Bill, what would it need to look like for you to be interested? And of course, that's an opportunity then for you to sort of be explicit about the salary that you want. And the thing about it is that if you are asked, it's really important to be honest. A lot of candidates will talk it up because they think, oh, well, I'm being asked what salary I want. I'm going to inflate my expectations accordingly. Excuse me one moment. Sorry about that. So, if somebody says to you, what salary do you want? And you actually want 150,000, but you say 250,000, then there's a very high likelihood you will be excluded from the process. And obviously you don't want that if it's a job that you're definitely interested in. So it's important to be realistic and put forward your real expectations. In saying that, there's nothing wrong with saying, look, I'd like to understand, what they're considering in terms of a salary range. And if the recruiter won't tell you, then I think that recruiter's being disingenuous. Whether that's an internal recruiter or an external recruiter, they should be able to say, look, the salary range is 150 to 200K or something like that. So really important from the get-go to be realistic about your expectations and also understand what their expectations are so that you don't end up being caught up in a recruitment process and disappointed at the end. The other thing, which often happens in a recruitment process is, somebody's quite explicit about what they want in terms of salary. They go all the way through the process, and at the end of the process, either the recruiter, the employer lowballs the candidate. So you might say, I want 200, and then it gets all the way to the end, and the employer says, look, we want to offer you 150. Once again, I think that's really silly and short-sighted because you're just going to drive the candidate crazy. They're going to feel that they've wasted their time. They're potentially going to be offended. And even if you do come to a negotiated outcome post that, it's not the best way to start a relationship. So certainly, when we are recruiting a role, if our candidate says 200, we tell the employer 200. If the employer then tries to lowball at the end, then we will, be pretty directive in terms of telling the employer what we think about that. On the other side of the coin too, what often happens is that the candidate says, I want 150, it gets all the way to the end, and then the employer says, okay, great, we're going to offer you 150, and the candidate turns around and says, actually, I've changed my mind, I want 200. And once again, not a great thing to do. So part of the role of the recruiter, a little bit like being a real estate agent, is to manage those salary negotiations. You imagine somebody's selling a house, they believe their house is worth $1 million. A prospective buyer wants to offer 800. The real estate agent sits in the middle to make sure that people, don't emotionally get triggered by that. They take the heat out of that. A good recruiter does that too. And that's often why, we suggest, particularly for more senior roles, they use an external recruiter because salary negotiations can be where things really fall over. Let's talk about hidden job market opportunity. So you get in front of an employer, you understand what is their pain points, what's causing them challenges or frustrations or problems at the moment, and you demonstrate to them that you can solve those problems for you. Often they will get really excited. Oh, Bill, we'd love to have you on the team to solve those problems for us. How much would you like? And it's a great opportunity for you to say what you would really like. Often if it's an advertised role, the client is already in a headspace about what the role should pay. Maybe they think the role should pay 200. The recruiter goes to the market, they source a bunch of candidates that present who want 300. They don't put them in the shortlist because they think that they're well above salary range, right? But the reality is if you can get in front of the employer before they know that they need you, and you can demonstrate through your key achievements and transferable skills that you could actually save that employer millions and millions of dollars or huge amounts of time and frustration and, because you can solve their problems for them. And then they say, how much do you want? And Bill says, I want 300. Well, they might go, well, it's worth paying 300 because Bill's so capable, he'll be able to save us so much more money in the long term. The opportunity cost, the opportunity is worth way more than the extra cost, right? That is why I really encourage you to uncover the hidden job market, getting in front of employers before they know that they need you. Number one, you're not competing with potentially 100, 200 other candidates for the role. And number two, you've got a much higher likelihood of negotiating, the package that you want. So I hope that answers your question, Bill, but certainly if you want to ask a follow-up question about that, please feel free to. In the meantime, who else would like to ask me a question? Okay, while I'm waiting for any further questions, then let me have a bit of a talk about the market. It'd be fair to say the market's been a bit quieter over the last few months. I think there's been quite a bit of uncertainty. We've certainly seen it in terms of our own clients. We've had a bit of a slower period than we have for quite a long time. But it really appears that things are turning around now. Certainly, we are starting to get a lot more inquiry about recruiting roles, and interestingly, typically in the past, December, January has been a quieter period for recruitment. We've actually found the reverse. It's actually been a very busy period for us, and so going on, particularly since COVID, so that's probably 5 years now, we've seen a real change in terms of the recruitment market over Christmas. And I think one of the reasons for that is, in the past, they'd say, look, there's no point advertising for a role because people are on holidays, they're not looking at the ads, their mind is not in job search mode. Well, of course, we're all carrying phones now. We can all access LinkedIn and Seek and see what jobs are being advertised. And so as a result, that sort of typical slowdown, whilst it hasn't gone completely, is definitely a bit less. Okay, some good questions coming through now. Jane, how do I get into the market at 55? Well, I suppose, Jane, I'm 57, right? And when I started in recruitment 20 plus years ago, it would be fair to say that, it was a lot more ageist than it is now. Organisations would look at people in their 50s and think, those people have, they're sort of in the twilight of their career. There was definitely a preference for employing younger people, but certainly that's changed dramatically. Organisations now are realising that people who have had a lot of life experience, what I call a SCAR resume, are actually very attractive as candidates. And in addition to that, the reality is that the workforce is getting older. There are less young people coming into the workforce, and older people, are a lot healthier and have a lot more energy and vitality than they used to. At 57, whilst I don't feel the same as when I was 35, I think that my experience and, my emotional intelligence and my leadership capability and so on has improved dramatically. So, I think, Jane, you shouldn't have any reservation about getting into the market at 55. But when you say get into the market, I don't know if that means you haven't been working and you now want to return to work, or you mean I am working, but I just want a new job, right? Again, if you read my book, Uncover the Hidden Job Market, what I talk about is that recruiters, if they're running an ad and they get 200 applicants and they need to shortlist that to 10 people, they are looking for reasons to say no. This person's too old, too young, too male, too female, too this, too that. They're looking for reasons to bring that list down to their top 10. If you are not the squarest peg for that square hole, it is hard for them to get, for you to get consideration. However, if you can get in front of the employer before they know that they need you, quite honestly, the employer typically won't care. I mean, if you were 75, I think it'd be a different conversation. But at 55, if you're a highly competent, experienced female professional, I don't think you'll have any challenges finding a new job at all. Bill, you may have mentioned this in your book too. How do we get into the hidden job market? All right. So again, definitely recommend that you read that book. The hidden job market. So what I'm talking about there is directly approaching your employers of choice. So it is working out, what is my job of choice with employer of choice? Okay, who are those employers that I'm most attracted to? Within those employers, who is the key decision maker? So obviously, if you're looking for a CEO role, the key decision maker is going to be the chair or the MD. If you're looking for a C-suite role, CIO, COO, CFO, etc., then the key decision maker is going to be the CEO. If you are earlier in your career, if you're an HR professional, then the relevant person would be the CHRO. If you're a finance professional, it would be the CFO, etc. So what you want to do is research and find that person on LinkedIn and reach out to them with a connection request and send them an email asking them for a 15-minute introductory meeting. The reality is that if people look at your LinkedIn profile and they can see that you're relevant, they will want to meet you because, they're looking consistently at how do they build their bench of talent, how are they creating people to take on opportunities that might be coming up in the business over the next 3 to 6 months. There may be, anticipated vacancy through, retirement or people moving into new roles or people who are not performing and so on. Employers are thinking we're not ready to go to the market yet, but if you can show up ahead of that and you can demonstrate to them that you're a great person for that forthcoming opportunity, they're thinking to themselves, why do we want to go through a hugely protracted, expensive recruitment process? Let's just hire Bill and get on with business, right? So what it is, it's about, firstly, that identification, who is the right person, reaching out to them, requesting a meeting. Now, of course, not everybody's going to want to meet with you straight away. They might be busy, they might be on holidays, they might be up to their neck in crocodiles, whatever. So, I suggest to people, if you're serious about this, a good starting point is 3 a day. So just block an hour in your diary every day. Maybe you get up an hour earlier each morning. And in that 1 hour, you identify 3 employers of choice. You find the 3 key decision makers. You send the 3 LinkedIn connection requests. You send the 3 emails asking for a meeting. 3 a day, 3 a day, 3 a day, 3 a day, 15 a week. That should get you 2 to 3 meetings a week. If you do that consistently for 12 weeks, I pretty much guarantee you will have a new job. I've had hundreds and hundreds of people who have implemented this system who have very successfully found a new job within 12 weeks, if not sooner. Okay, so these are not jobs that are advertised. These are hidden job market opportunities. And it really relies on you. You need to take action. You need to put yourself out there by going directly to your employers of choice. And so, Bill, I would really recommend read the book and you'll understand it's a very simple to follow step-by-step methodology to enable you to do that. Okay, Fedra. Hi, Richard. I'm based in Sydney. You mentioned there's been increased activity in December. Well, we're not quite in December yet, but certainly in November. Are you observing the same for fractional CFO roles? Interestingly, we are only very early in our fractional service offering, and the first 2 fractional roles that we've picked up are both CFO roles. One for a major mining company and one for a property company. And fractional CFO roles are very, very popular now. In fact, we have a client, they have a fractional CFO, a fractional CHRO, and a fractional CMO, Chief Marketing Officer. They're about a $50 million business. They want to have the real strategic capability of very, very high-end people, but they don't want to pay and they don't need them full time. So, that's worked very well for them. And again, fractional is a fantastic way of entering the hidden job market, because you can say to these employers, I'd love to have a chat to you. And then you can say to them, look, I'm actually looking to work fractionally or on an interim basis. And employers are going to be very attracted to that. 1, because they get the flexibility. 2, because it's less expensive. And 3, because it's also potentially a bit of a try before you buy. So there's always great appetite for fractional roles. And once again, if you start to really get out and get in front of your employers of choice, I think you'll find you can secure those roles, quite easily. Bill, how do you find out about the business's culture before you accept the role? Well, hopefully you'll be able to, determine a fair bit of that through the interview process by asking intelligent questions about that. But what I would also be doing is having a look at the leader's LinkedIn profile. And it's quite easy on LinkedIn to find people who've previously worked in the company. I also think that it's quite reasonable now to say to an employer, look, I'd really love to speak to 2 or 3 people in the team as part of my due diligence on the opportunity. And the employer should be quite comfortable in allowing you to do that. In fact, every time I employ somebody in my business, I actually encourage them to do that. I want them to ask, what's the good, the bad, and the ugly? I want them to understand what's it like working at Arete and what's it like working for Richard. So I think it's just a case of, asking good questions and asking to speak to people in the role or in the business and getting their opinion. I mean, that is something that is really critically important. If you're taking a role on in a business, it's due diligence is everything. The last thing you do want to do is to take a job and then 3 months later go, oh my God, this place is terrible. The boss is a narcissist. The team hate working here, etc. I mean, in my first recruitment job, way back, 20 odd years ago, I joined, the biggest recruitment company in the world. And in my first 12 weeks there, 14 recruiters resigned. And I was like, wow, that is not good. And what I realized is that I'd gone to a recruiter as a candidate, and they'd said to me, oh, have you ever thought about being a recruiter? And I said, no. And so then I joined them as a recruiter. I didn't actually say, oh, if I'm serious about having a job as a recruiter, I should go and meet with a few different recruitment companies. So I lasted in that business for about 12 months. I then went and met with 6 different recruitment companies before deciding the next place for me to go to. So, I highly recommend you to do that. Jane, thank you. No problem, Jane. Back to Bill. Bill, like your questions. I've looked up a few company reviews and sometimes you get mixed reviews. Of course. And, there are these websites like Glassdoor and so on. And you think to yourself, well, I mean, who's going there and writing reviews? Typically people who are disgruntled, right? The person who's in the job, they're really enjoying it. They love their boss. They're relatively well paid. They get to do interesting work. They're not writing reviews. I don't know about you, Bill. I've never written a review about a previous employer online ever, right? So, as you say, I would really take it with a grain of salt. And I would definitely not form an opinion before the meeting. So some people go, oh, how do I know that I want to go and meet with XYZ company if I don't know what their culture's like? Well, how do you find it out unless you go and meet with them? What's the worst that can happen? You have a meeting with them and post that meeting, you go, actually, I don't think I'd like to work here. So, I would say rather than getting paralysis by analysis, and getting too concerned about it by reading reviews and all of this kind of stuff, go and have a meeting, see how it goes, see if you gel with the person that you're meeting with and whether you're keen to progress the conversation. But definitely a very important thing to do. Okay, any further questions? Who hasn't asked me a question yet? Richard, have you asked me a question yet? I don't think so. Do you want to ask me a question? What about you, Stuart? Jane, Bill, Fedra, anything further from you? As you can see, very small group. Previously I've had over 140 people attending these. I don't know whether people are just getting sick of the sound of my own voice or, getting into the Christmas period and people are busy and, they don't have the time. But, it's a very small group. So, use the opportunity today. You won't get this opportunity again. It's certainly not with me until the new year. So if there's anything in the back of your mind, Bill, just fire away. Okay, we'll give it a couple more minutes. If we don't have any further questions, here we go. Jane, what you've mentioned about the market, is that nationwide or specific to a state? Look, Jane, I think it is nationwide. I mean, obviously different states have different things at different times. I mean, South Australia with this algal bloom, and there's been some interesting challenges in Melbourne, this year, and that's affecting things. On the other side of the coin, in Brisbane, we've got the Olympics coming up in a few years, so that's affecting things. So yeah, but I would say at any time in any market, companies want to hire good people. If they're in a poor market, they want to hire good people to help them through a poor situation. If they're in a booming market, they want to hire good people to take advantage of the booming market. There are certain industries that are more future-proof, and obviously with AI and everything that's happening there, it's going to be really interesting to see how that affects the job market in the next 3 to 5 years. I think it's going to have a very profound impact. But I would say, obviously, Jane, without knowing you or your background and so on, I'm sure that if you get out and start following what I talk about in my book and really get generating some momentum in terms of reaching out to your employers of choice, yeah, you'll probably find that irrespective of what state you're in, you will find and secure new work relatively easily. Thanks, Fedra. Hi, Richard. I enjoyed your sessions. Good. Actively need to reach out to my employers of choice. I definitely recommend it. Stuart, if one has left a role and does not have a new one lined up yet, do you recommend leaving your LinkedIn profile as employed? Well, I suppose it depends on the duration, Stuart. If you left an employer and you're looking immediately for a new job, I think you could quite comfortably leave it as it is. If it's been 2 years, then you probably need to change it. Again, I don't think there's anything wrong with actually putting your end date there, because recruiters or people who are looking at your profile, if they see that you're finished, then obviously that may mean that you're available for a new opportunity. There is the ability in LinkedIn to toggle on and off this open to work or looking for new opportunities, and then LinkedIn Recruiter, so recruiters who are using LinkedIn Recruiter can see that. So a lot of people might still be in their job, but they turn that on. It's basically broadcasting to recruiters, hey, I'm open for you to approach me about jobs. Once again, we don't put a lot of credence into that, because as a headhunter, we are headhunting people all the time who aren't looking for a new job, but we want to demonstrate to them our opportunity and hopefully encourage them to apply for it. Yeah, so look, I think you just need to use your own judgment there. I don't think in the sort of immediate term it really makes a lot of difference. But if there's been an extended break, and again, if there's been an extended break, then you might put in there as an actual job, if you were out of work from 2023 to 2000 now, career break to care for aging parents, or career break to return to university, or career break, for maternity leave. So put something in there so that people don't think, what's Stuart been doing for the last 2 years? Has he been sitting on the beach, or, has he had a health issue, or whatever it might be? So put a little explanation there. Again, honesty is the best policy. Bill, is there any good advice on pushing what I consider as transferable skills? I'm in sales business development. Well, absolutely. You should definitely be pushing your transferable skills. And the best way to do that is by asking, the employer, what do they want achieved in a role? So I talk about the best question to ask in an interview is, if you were to employ me in 12 months' time, what would I have needed to have achieved in order to be, highly successful? What do you actually want me to do? And then they say, well, one of the things we want you to do is blah, blah, blah. And then you can talk then, let me tell you when I've done it before. And you can talk about your direct experience of where you've done that before. We promote a recruitment methodology called performance-based hiring. the best predictor of future performance is past performance. You want somebody who's done it before, done it well, and they're motivated to do it again. But of course, sometimes what they want you to do, you haven't done it before. And in that instance, it's an opportunity to talk about your transferable skills. And so you say, look, I haven't exactly done that, but what I have done is this. And these are the things that I achieved. And that, is quite pertinent to what you're looking for, and so it's having these key deliverables as what I call the hooks in which to hang your key achievements and transferable skills on. Now, the way I talk about it is, of course, if I said to a company, well, what do you want me to achieve? And they said, oh, Richard, we need you, or we need this person to sort out our supply chain issues in China. We since COVID, we've had real issues with getting consistency of supply, and we need to do blah, da, 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 da. And I've got no relevant experience in that. Then I need to say, look, I've never done that before, right? Because it'll be glaringly obvious if I try and lie about it. And secondly, it's probably not a job that I want if I've never done it before and I've never really had any, aspiration or appetite to do that. So again, it's important to be sort of honest about our transferable skills. But employers are very open to considering, people with transferable skills. As a direct example, we're just finalising the recruitment of a CEO for an FMCG company, and they really wanted somebody from an FMCG family-owned business background. And anyway, the preferred candidate that they are now very attracted to has never worked in FMCG and has never worked in family business. But they have other attributes that the owner of this company is very attracted to. Now, if that candidate had applied to the ad, they would have pretty much immediately got a thanks but no thanks email, because they were not on brief at all. And that is what I told the employer. But because this candidate approached the employer directly and were able to sell their key achievements and transferable skills, the owner is now very seriously considering them, even though they are not on the original brief. Once again, another perfect example of how important it is to be directly approaching your employers of choice in order to access hidden job market opportunities. Okay, any final questions? As you can hear, I'm running out of puff. I'm happy to keep going, but this cold is getting the better of me. So if we don't have any more questions in the next 30 seconds, then we'll just wrap it up. I certainly wish you all a fantastic holiday period. We are getting to that time of the year, and I would really, really encourage you to be reaching out to your employers of choice before Christmas. A lot of these companies are starting to think in the new year we need to hire, but we don't want to go to the market now. We want to do it in late January. But in the meantime, they know that they are intending to hire. If you can get in front of them now in December and they go, wow, Stuart's awesome. Why even bother going to the market? Let's just hire Stuart and have him start in the business in late January. You'd be amazed how often that turns into great opportunity. So use this period. Also, a lot of key decision makers might be slowing down before Christmas. They have a bit more availability to have meetings than they might do, at the end of the financial year, for example. So get out, shake hands, kiss babies, read my book if you haven't already done so, and good luck with your job search. And please, share with us your success stories. Always love to hear, how people have applied what we've spoken about today and in the book in order to achieve their next role. Have a fantastic night and Merry Christmas.